you are ready to record. Dawn, I'm going to pass the mic to you.
Thank you. All right, great. Hello, everyone. My name is Dawn Roberts, and if you're here or watching, you're tuning into the Media Access Workshop organized by the Philadelphia Association of Black Journalists and PhillyCam. For this part of tonight's program, we are introducing the first of two 30-minute panels. This first panel, which I will moderate, I am the moderator for it, is titled, What's Your Pitch? How to Get the Media Coverage You Want. A brief background about myself as your moderator for this evening. I'm the Director of External Community Relations for the College of Education and Human Development at Temple University. And I am a seasoned communications consultant. I bring my journalism, communications, and media relations and event management experience to this panel, expertise to this panel. We have four wonderful panelists with me today, and I'm going to introduce them one by one. And I wanted to mention to everyone that's here with us that we have bios for everyone as well. Our first panelist, Dionysia, better known as Dio Robertson, is the Associate Editor of Community Narratives at Resolve Philly. Lorraine Ballard-Morrill is Director of News and Community Affairs for iHeartMedia's 6 Philadelphia stations. All right, I'm so happy to have both of you. Kaylani Palmisano is the food editor of Philadelphia Magazine. And next to Kaylani, we have Manny Smith. Manny is Senior Editorial Manager at Yahoo, leading a team focused on homepage and app content coverage and planning. So I'm going to jump right in. I wanted to read their wonderful bios, but I said, you know what? Let me just jump on in. And as we talk further, I'm going to mention some things that they do full-time, every day, day-to-day, and I'm sure that they'll put some in there as well. So my first question is directed at Kaylani. What elements make a pitch stand out to you? For example, how can PR professionals create pitches that grab your attention?
Well, I think that a great pitch is one that also connects to the type of work that I do. So it's very helpful if someone is familiar already with some of my bylines or some of the stories that I've covered, because I don't want to receive a pitch that I don't necessarily have the aptitude to cover the story, unless, as an editor, I also work with other writers. So that might be if you're pitching me a story and I have someone that I know is a great person to cover that story because it's in their wheelhouse, I would share it with them. But coming to the table with, one, a knowledge of the publication that you are pitching to, perhaps even the specific writer that you want to work with. And also, I think the timeliness peg is a really important angle as well to a pitch. So if you can tie it to whether a greater conversation that is happening within the community, connect that to your pitch.
Awesome. Thanks, Kaylani. All right, my next question here, I want to direct it to Manny and Dio. Beyond a compelling pitch, how important is the relationship between PR professionals and journalists in securing coverage? I'll get Dio go first.
So I think with my role as Associate Editor of Community Narratives, I don't receive pitches from community members. They come to me usually before a draft is even written. So on their behalf, I make pitches to other outlets. And for that reason, that relationship is incredibly important. And I guess in that scenario, the journalists would be the outlets in question. Resolve has 29 newsroom partnerships with the different local newsrooms around Philadelphia. So the relationship with any one of those newsrooms and that outlet is like a big chunk of the resource that I can offer to community members in working with me, that they're not doing all of this work and then there's no hope of any place to pitch or place and there's no leads. That's a big part of the package that I sort of am able to offer. So it's incredibly important to maintain and sustain those relationships for that reason.
And I want to, as Manny comes on, I want you to answer it based on your previous role and tell us a little bit about your previous role.
I spent 3 years as the managing editor of the CBS 3 newsroom here in Philly. And Dawn, it's good to be on the panel with you tonight because you're like the Olivia Pope of PR here in Philly. And so I just want to make sure the panel and the audience and the people who watch this later on know that you are asking these questions from a point of real experience. And listen, we worked together at CBS 3 and at jobs I've had before.
Right.
And I work with you at many different roles you have had. And so the question about relationship is important. The relationship is everything, right? Because listen, listen to this panel, right? There's not really that many journalists compared to PR people, right? So you burn us once, we talk to each other, so and this is also very important though, you as a communications professional and you as a communications person with your brand to talk to your clients about, hey, if we're going to promise this, if something's happening at 5:30, people have to be ready at 5:30. If you tell me 30 kids are going to be there better be 35. Because we will remember, we will know, and you don't want things to go bad because it only takes one opportunity and it's really hard to recover.
Right, thank you. And this next question is for Lorraine. Are there specific ways PR professionals can strengthen these relationships over time?
Well, I think that being someone who can find the right types of stories to pitch to me, that's number one. Because if you're constantly pitching a story that I'm not interested in or that I'm really not it's appropriate for, then it's just a waste of time. Coming to events like this is another great way to make those connections. I like to go to events like this just for that very reason, and I get the opportunity to meet you all and make those connections. So a lot of times, just as I go and speak to students at Temple, for instance, I'll say to that group of people, I know that I'll give you my email address, and maybe 3 people out of 50 will follow up and try to connect with me. So if we've made a connection, follow up with it, and that's the first step. And then, of course, Dawn, I have to give her as a great example. Well, first of all, I have to say, I am so proud of Dawn and Manny because they were both my interns back in the day. Uh-oh. Yeah, so there is longevity in terms of knowing people, working with them over time, and someone like Don, or there are other people as well, they have me at hello because I know I can depend on them to give me the right kind of story that I'd be interested in, that they're going to be good at follow-up. If I have questions, they're going to answer the questions, and it's easy because a lot of us, me in particular, because I'm a one-woman news department, but I think that's true for everybody, we are really overworked and we have limited time, so that if there's little glitches, those are turnoffs for us. And so being someone that you can depend on, who's going to give you the kind of stories that you want, and over time you start to develop those relationships, and then you become that go-to person. I might have a question. Do you have somebody who can speak on this? That's where you want to be.
Can I pop in?
Oh, certainly.
I think it's, and again, real talk for PR professionals here in the room. Listen, we like having a relationship, but there's a real deal about spreading it out. Listen, as journalists, we are meant to cover the community in a broader sense. So listen, if I hook you up at the top of Black History Month, you can't come back February 5th and be like, hey, I got this next thing for you. You know what I mean? Like, you got to spread it out. Give me a little bit of space. Come back next month or tell me, hey, what your next big thing is, but I can't do you every single day. And you can't get an attitude, definitely, if I say no to something, because again, it's a situation where you talk about relationship, I might not be so apt to answer the phone or that email the next time around. Spread it out.
Excellent point. Thank you for sharing that. All right, so let's see. I have another question here, and this is directed to, actually, how important is a pitch to align with your media outlet's specific focus and audience? And this is actually to Kehlani.
I think that's critical. I mean, that's at the top of mind is we have an audience that we are talking to and conveying information to, and if the story doesn't fall in line with that, it doesn't work. So I will also add that I just got back from maternity leave today, and I got back to, I mean, I was looking at my emails while I was away, but I had to filter through like 800 emails, which is not that bad for having been gone for like 8 weeks. But I feel like I had so many pitches and press releases that tied to nothing that I do. And not only, so I had an out of office response, which should be please stop emailing me until like this day. I was amazed at how many people just kept following up, knowing that I'm not there. I'm not helping you. I'm not in the office right now. So what you were mentioning was like, okay, I kind of remember, I got to the point where I kept seeing the same name over and over and over again. And so I just started filtering by that name, delete, and I was just like, I can't go through all of these emails. But aside from just like being nagged while I was away on maternity leave, which by the way, the email specifically had people that you could contact while I was away for 2 months. So in addition to that, like I also am not inclined, like people, I work in food. I work in food, and I would get pitches about like, oh, do you want to talk to this female leaders in the medical field? And I'm like, okay, that's not really my vertical. That's not something that I cover. So yeah, just making sure that it not just connects with the audience. I mean, those are some pretty extreme examples, but just having a familiarity with the tone of Philadelphia Magazine, of the kinds of stories that we tell, and also the ways in which we approach them. And like I mentioned before, the familiarity with my work and my own personal interests too. I mean, if you've read my work over the years, it's like I'm a history nerd. I love a good ghost story. Like someone actually told me about a restaurant with like a possible ghost, and I'm like, well, like just like tie it to like, you know, not to be that silly, but yeah, tie it to what you know that what I cover. And even if you begin the email with like, hey, I read this story recently, here's something similar, or here's a follow-up, or here's something to expand on this conversation that we're having. So those are, yeah, that would be a good way to catch my attention and for me to listen to your pitches.
I love it. Great tips. I hope you're all taking notes now. All right now. So I have a question for Lorraine. What is your preferred method for PR professionals to follow up on a pitch, and how much follow-up is too much? And it kind of, you touched on that too, Kehlani.
Yeah, I think that the best way for me is email. People who somehow get my number and text me, forget you. I mean, that's like a turnoff. Also, I actually don't really like getting calls either, because for one thing, I mean, who talks on the phone anymore? But I mean, I will talk on the phone if I'm interested, and I will call that person. That's one thing. But definitely for me, it's email for sure. Although people have reached out to me through social media as well, and that's not necessarily a bad way to do it. I think that, and that also speaks to that connection and that relationship. Follow us on Twitter and X or whatever we're calling it, and Instagram, and start to connect with us, relate to us. You know, respond to the stories that we post, and you know, we've got egos. We love that. So that's another just a little ego tip that you might want to utilize. But for me, it's mostly email.
Great. You know, matter of fact, let's ask everyone, right? We all want to know, everyone. So, Dio, how do people contact you?
Oh, man. It's long because my name is
Well,
long.
actually, I should
but
say, not so much
the
yet. You don't have to
method-
give it yet.
Oh, yeah.
But,
Email is always best.
Email,
My
okay.
cell phone number is on my business cards, and I don't mind getting calls. Texts are usually better, but we can always start the conversation by phone and then move it to email and then move it to Zoom if we have to. So any of my information that you get, it's fine to start a conversation that way.
Great. How about you, Kehlani?
I feel like email is definitely the best, and if I don't respond right away, please just like follow up once on the same email, because sometimes it just brings that same message to the top of my inbox. I might not respond right away or cover that specific story, but if I remember that you're tied to a certain community or to certain clients, I will remember you later on, and I might follow up like months down the line to say, hey, I am interested in this particular story of this particular client that you represent. Do you have artwork? Do you have their contact information so that I can reach out for an interview? I do actually like Instagram a lot, interestingly. I do like, I feel like Instagram for events specifically. That's where I find out a lot about events, but if you want to just like send, I guess some people tag me sometimes in posts, and I don't know how I feel about that just yet. I'm not sure how I feel. I'm not really paying. Sometimes it gets lost. If you tag me, it just gets lost in notifications. But if you message me, it's like an inbox almost. So, but sadly, X or Twitter, like I feel so bad. I haven't been on Twitter in a very long time. I just kind of lost interest in it. And I go back in sometimes and there's DMs and I'm like, oh, I feel so bad. I miss these DMs. Yeah.
How about you, Manny?
Email is definitely the universal way that people should reach out, but remember, it's a pitch, so you're trying to get our attention. So listen, while we may not take calls, I need you to answer your phone. And every communication you send to us, you should have your phone number in it, and you should be able to answer. And particularly, listen, especially at like, you know, when at CBS 3 especially, I've got a little bit more editorial time at Yahoo. I need you to answer the phone in the morning. Like, you know, hey, I'm thinking about my 6 p.m. newscast at 6 a.m. And so, hey, I might not be calling you, but hey, respond to my text. Is those people who are picking up, those people who are ready with what they promised in that email, are the people who are going to get coverage later in the day?
I do have a little pet peeve, and that is people who don't include their numbers. Because if I am interested, I would like to pick up the phone and get immediate responses because that's, because I don't have that much time. So people don't seem to include that a lot in their email signature, and I'm not sure if that's just a generational thing, but just be sure to include your phone number. Another little pet peeve, I have to say, is when I'm having a conversation with somebody via email, sometimes people will start a new email. Don't do that. Just keep that thread going, because if I have to search through my inbox, which is the black hole, to try to find information that you previously sent to me and it's not on that email thread, then I will get impatient and irritated. So try to do that. Try to always respond to an email thread and keep it going rather than starting a new email. Pet peeve.
All right. This is really important to know, right, everyone? While you have the microphone, Lorraine, can you share an example of a pitch that successfully utilized social media to enhance coverage?
Gosh, there's so many. The AIDS Walk is one. They reach out to me, and not only do they reach out to me about doing an interview, then when I do the interview, they'll post it and they'll repost it. They might, try to tag me on Twitter or Instagram. I think the AIDS Walk is one that comes to mind, but there's so many, but that's one.
That's a good one. Okay. And for TV and online media, how important are visual elements in a pitch? I'm looking at Manny on this one. What types of visuals enhance a story and catch your eye?
I know you assembled a talented audience here. Anybody here from the White House press office or anything? No? All right. So short of that, when we talk about visual elements, no journalist really wants to come to a press conference, right? If you have a podium involved, that is boring. We are here to tell stories. And sometimes we really want to tell those stories first. But sometimes, if it's not first, we want to be on trend. Right. And so, hey, tell me exactly what's happening, right? I don't want to just come to the kids' graduation, right? Tell me, hey, these kids are coming to school and they all have got college scholarships and it's their first day of school. Or, or hey, I'm looking at Tawheed and I know you're, interested in the cannabis thing. And I remember a lot of cannabis shops when it became partially legalized in New Jersey, a lot of people had little parties, like selling hot dogs and pretzels, stuff like that, out 6 in the morning, waiting to get their first little hit of cannabis for medical. But that is a very visual story. I'm able to talk about the excitement and the enthusiasm and people for all the different reasons they were there, mostly medical. But that's the type of opportunity that people should kind of look for. We don't care about the press conferences, and we certainly don't care about anything at the end of it. I do want to make one quick point, too.
Well, I want to make a joke. I have a joke.
Oh, sure.
So,
Okay.
so how about my big check presentation? I have this big check that we have, at my press conference. And then I also have Hooter there.
Well, I mean, that helps.
Okay.
But you know what? The funny part is I kind of think about it in the sense, right? In the effort it's going to take you to craft something for the media, sometimes at the end, right? And especially in TV, I think a lot of people and a lot of PR professionals, and I know it's what gets you paid, those clips at the end of the day.
Right.
It's like in that sense, oh, we had this great food drive, and here's like 30 seconds of what happened, and we'll put that on television. But really, how does that benefit anyone in the community, right? They can't come to the food drive, right? You can't attract new donors that way. So start to think about how you're crafting your story and start to use us too. Hey, come to us a little bit earlier so that way we can tell people what to come out to. Have me come out the day before when you're packing up meals for the homeless so that we can tell people to come the next day and to get food. It's on you, use us to be able to help you move your message.
I think the other thing too is understanding where our deadlines are. For instance, I have a show, it's on Sunday mornings, and so if you contacted me on a Wednesday or a Thursday for something that's happening on a Saturday, I'm not going to have the bandwidth or the ability to do that story. So try to give us a little notice. There's so many great stories that I've had to pass up on because I didn't have the ability to do those stories or do the interviews because I didn't have enough time. Also, understand what the deadlines are for the different mediums, because TV is very different than print, for instance, and radio is a little different too. Know when the show's deadlines are, what their cycle is. So understand the deadlines. I think that's also very important.
And while you have the microphone, so ideally, should I send you something 3 weeks in advance, a month in advance? What would you say?
I would say at least 2 weeks in advance. And the problem for me only is because I'm the only person there, that if you send something to me 4 weeks in advance, and I get distracted and then it gets buried, then, you know, it might as well not exist. So I think at least 2 weeks to give me some lead time. Actually, a little more time is fine too, but definitely not the day of or the week of. Understand what the deadlines are and what the time frame is.
Okay. Now, Kehlani, I know your deadline is a little different, right?
Yeah, because I straddle both print magazine and the online, the digital FUBUs for Philly Mag. So it's a couple of different timelines. With a magazine, that's a few months in advance. So it could be, like, it's the holidays right now, and we're thinking about February, March. Yeah, so keep that in mind. Like, it'll be cold March weather, and we'll be thinking about the shore. But that's for the print side. And then, yeah, for online, it's a little bit more fast-paced. Yeah, don't reach out, like, a couple days beforehand. I would say maybe a week. Like, that gives me enough time to either write it myself or get someone internally. If it's a little bit bigger of a story, maybe 2 weeks. But there's also some things that are evergreen online, so for FUBUs, so that has less of a precedence. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Manny, how about some deadlines with TV and your online?
I think a week in advance. You probably want to send something out initially if it's a press release a week in advance, and then, you know, maybe 2 or 3 days in advance before, just to make sure they have it and they have it on their calendar. You know, Dawn, these newsrooms don't like to keep enough of us employed, so
Right.
nobody's really thinking about anything more than a week in advance.
Now, before we go to our audience, because I know we have some burning questions out there, I do want to ask, press releases, media advisories, PSAs, what did we send you? Lorraine?
I'll take them all.
Okay.
I mean, I'm always interested in all of those things. You know, it's just a matter of the limitations of how much time I have or amount of, like PSAs, for instance. That, please send those to me at least a month in advance, actually. That's a little bit different because I do have to schedule those in. And someone asked me, again, you know, this happens all the time. I get asked to promote something the week of, and I can't because I have to go through a whole process of, you know, creating an order, and there's all kinds of technology or technical reasons for that. What was the rest of the question?
So that's I'm glad you mentioned it about PSAs. That's very important. So would you prefer a press release or a media advisory?
It doesn't really matter to me. It's really the content and the subject that matters more. Although I have to say that sometimes a press release might have more details that might pique my interest more. If it's just a who, what, when, where, I may not be as compelled, or it may not be as compelling to me. So that's my opinion.
Awesome. And all right, so let's see. Any questions out there? All right, young lady. Say your name and where you're from and your question. Okay.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I am Tiffany Dubois Morales, founder and CEO of Dubois Public Relations, LLC. So, next Thursday is Girard College's 175th anniversary gala. Yuki Washington of CBS 3 is our MC, and Dr. Lorena Marshall Blake is supposed to be honored. There's supposed to be food and performances. How would I pitch it to you?
Everyone.
How would I pitch it to you guys, minus obviously having it being featured on CBS 3?
When is this again?
Next Thursday, December 14th, from
Yeah.
6 to 10 p.m. at the newly renovated Founders Hall at Girard College.
Well, it's too late for me. It is too late for me, but I would say we're not, I mean, in general, it's not that I don't cover or do interviews about events like that, but what I'm more interested in is the story behind the story, because Girard College has a rich history in the civil rights movement. So I would be interested in the pitch related to the history of Girard College and why at 175 years, where we are now and what the, what the importance of that school has been to the fight for civil rights. So that's sort of more, I'm not so as interested in talking about a gala. Although I will do that, there's no question, I will do that to promote a nonprofit that's raising money for a good cause, and it'll be a smaller interview. But that would be an interesting story to tell. But I wouldn't, that's just me. I don't know how anyone else feels about that. But.
In that sense of like being strategic, picking up off of Lorraine in that sense. So you got to know, and it's one of those things, a lot of people like to find media people to host their galas, right? But now you know that listen, Channel 6 is not sending the camera to the Yuki Washington event. So might as well count everyone else out for that night. That's right. But again, be strategic about those stories. Like, hey, who is this benefiting? Are there some excellent students or alums who are going to be in attendance? Are there stories that I can tell? That I can pitch to Lorraine. Maybe, again, if you think about it in a sense, being strategic, right? Kehlani, talks about food, right? Do you have some exceptional caterer who's coming? Or are the kids making food? Yes. But are the kids being involved? That's something that we could tell a story about.
Supposed to be doing a performance during the actual gala itself, and the proceeds for all of the tickets, sponsorships, that goes directly to all of the families that have their children enrolled at Girard College, because it is a scholarship preparatory school. They don't pay anything.
Yeah, so sometimes, again, come out with what the user need is for. Sometimes when I talk to my reporters, when you're pitching a story to me, I'm like, what user need are you trying to solve for? Because while that sounds great in my ear, right? If I've got the morning news on, I'm trying to get my kids out the door, I'm trying to check my coffee machine, right? All that stuff sounds good, but do I really care about it? You care about it, but I may not necessarily at that point. You've got to find other points to that sense. It's not, listen, we all pretend to be super nice and caring people, but we care about ourselves the most. So what is that thing that you can connect with people on? It's not just, hey, you're a good person. Sometimes it's just not enough, right? We want to connect with people on a broader level if we can.
Great. Thanks, Tiffany.
You're talking about the 175th anniversary of Girard College, and I'm just hearing about it today. I mean, that had to have been in the planning for a while, right?
It has been, but there's been a variety of.
Well, I don't need to hear that, but I'm just saying that if especially for these signature events, you've got to have, some planning involved. So try to get to us a little sooner.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thanks, Lorraine and Manny, for addressing that. I have one final question. I know I saw. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Hi, everyone. My name is Megan. Oh, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Washington. This question is for any of the panelists. Could you speak to any challenges you might have occurred or came across in your pitches, whether it might be a story that might not be in alignment, something you might support, but like your news organization as a whole might not, and how do you sort of balance or handle challenges that may come up with deciding on what stories you decide to report on?
That's not a problem for me because I'm the boss. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Ernest. There's one thing for longevity, and I've been doing this at my company for 40 years. And I have very good skincare, okay? I moisturize. But yeah, so I don't really have that issue, but I'm very blessed and unique in that. And my point of view is I want to tell the stories from the community with the voices, give people voice and the opportunity to tell their stories. So I am fortunate in that I really don't run into that so much.
If I can add really quickly, so in food world, like I am so enamored sometimes by chefs that have incredible backstories or who are very mission driven in their work. And so sometimes I want to tell those stories personally because they're really meaningful to me, they're really inspiring to me, but I need to also remember that from a consumer standpoint, my readers are diners. They're not industry. They're not on the inside as deep as I am or as I have been for years now. So I also have to, if I do find an awesome person that I want to cover, I want to profile, I need to then figure out, how does that connect to the community and how does that service the reader who is coming at it from, I'm a diner and, why does that matter to me?
Or one big thing too, in adding that, when you talk about difficulties, you guys as PR conduits, again, you are the representative of the person you're representative. And you need to coach them and be ready, right? So if you're pitching me a story about, hey, this woman was homeless and we gave her a new house, is she ready to talk about being homeless on TV, right? Is it, you gotta make sure those folks are ready. And even when you have clients who are professional, you know what I mean? I cannot say how many times it's been frustrating, hey, I'm gonna interview a CEO, right? And I need them on TV at 6:30, and they're like, hey, they're getting their hair done. Like, that does not work for me. So make sure you coach them and make sure they're ready and that their expectations are clear. And that's what you can do mostly as the PR person, is ask those questions in advance. Yes, Manny, it's great, your camera can come at 6:30. What time do you need me to be ready?
I want to answer this
Yeah,
one
certainly,
too.
Dio.
Because I'm pretty lucky because Resolve has these partnerships already. I don't have a lot of pushback, but all of my pitches are on behalf of community members who've written their own narrative and have been, editorially supported by me and professionally edited and polished. I think when I do face challenges, it's from people that I still have to kind of defend, like, the importance of narrative empowerment. So I won't say it happens very, very often, because like I said, I'm in a position where I'm really fortunate. A lot of these pathways are already sort of open. But if I do have to bypass them, it turns into a conversation about, well, there are some ways that you can't substantiate lived experience, and like maybe figure out exactly what you're asking for. If you're asking for fact checking on this point, are you actually saying, I don't believe that this happened to you? Are you accidentally reinforcing some notions and barriers to storytelling? Or what is it that you're really looking for? Do you need the assurance that people who are reading this aren't just coming away with a big problem and maybe there's some resources like this happened to this person, here's how you can address it if it happens to you? Because if that's what you're asking for, that I can provide. But it's always going to be a conversation where I have to win. I have to win that argument about why narrative empowerment is important, because there's no way that I'm representing a community member accurately or responsibly or with care if I'm then turning around and asking them, yo, this editor's not really cool with what you said happened to you in 2018. Could you try to fact check this a little bit and make it a little bit more palatable to other people who've never had this experience, please? That's just not something that, like, it completely defies the purpose of my role. So when I do face challenges, it is always those, and the conversation is always the same. And I usually win. If I don't win, then we pivot, because Philly's full of news outlets. So it's really not that deep. But when the challenges occur, that's what they look like.
Awesome. Thanks, Dio. Thanks, Lorraine. Thanks, Kaylani. Thanks, Manny. Let's give them a round of applause. All right. Thank you.
Oh, you want to stand up?